Login accepted.
Good afternoon, Devoxx. So I guess it's quite customary to say that I missed being here in front of live audience, and well, I do. It's way better than looking at the grid of icons, I can tell you that. And well, to the topic. So my name is Piotr Czajka, and I'm working for TomTom, which once was a name in navigation companies, but now we are more into services that, well, help people create their own navigation. So as these are services, you can guess that there are a lot of code reviews because they need to be constantly updated. So yeah, today we'll be talking about code review, but from the more psychological part. So my goal today, I don't know if I can reach it, but I would like to change the way you think about code review, about how you do code review and what are the goals. So basically, in my opinion, code review, knowing how to fix the code, is just half of the work. And well, the other is how to tell people what is wrong with their code. And the more seniority you gain, this knowing how to fix the code becomes smaller and smaller because the more things become obvious to you. And well, if they become obvious, it's harder, at least for most people, it's harder to explain because, well, they are obvious. So you can do a lot of stuff to ease the pain of getting these negative reviews, because it's always a bit stressful. One of them was employed by one of my teams, and it was roughhousing. And by roughhousing, I mean we did this kind of a game where I tried to find more bugs in the code than my fellows found in mine. And, well, it was fun, it was a bit rough, but, well, it worked. It lowered the stress level a lot. But then, well, it's not the best for everyone, I guess, and we tend to fail. And there are many roads to failure, at least when we're talking about human-to-human interaction. So one of them might be home office, and by no means I say it's inherently evil, but home office brings the additional barrier between us and the person we're doing code review for. Basically, it's not doing review face-to-face. And not doing review face-to-face is also quite common if you're working in an office environment, because we tend to use Bitbucket, we tend to use GitHub, because it's easy, it's convenient, but we lose the grip with another person. And the further away we are from another person, the more this internet thing kicks in. And by the internet thing, I mean we tend to say stuff that we wouldn't normally say to another person's face. Like, you've been to the forums, you've seen the comments on Twitter. They tend to be harsh. And by no means I'm implying that you're harsh to your fellows. It just happens gradually. So working from home, we've been around things we like, we know, and those people became more and more of an icon on the screen. Maybe just an avatar in your Slack. So they become like someone who's not real. And that's the issue. It takes only one bad day to reduce the saniest man alive to lunacy. And apparently, it also happens in code review. And I learned it the hard way. I did a lot of bad stuff, and I'm not proud of it, but I'm also not very ashamed, because by making errors, we learn. And at one point, I was working in a team where we had a very special service, which was written in Python by one of our interns. And the problem was no one else wrote in Python. So it was this foster child nobody liked. And at one point, we had to do a migration. So everybody in the team migrated those Java projects, and this one Python thing just remained somewhere aside. So one of our managers, who was also a programmer, said that, OK, he'll do it, but he needs a good code review. And unfortunately, this code review landed on me, because I had the most knowledge about Python at the moment. And I did the review, and from that moment it all went south. Really, it was really bad. And the atmosphere in the team became quite toxic because of it. So I'll come back to this topic later on, but you can see that one review can really make a difference. So at the beginning I thought that, well, okay, maybe that guy is toxic, because who would react to a code review like that? But then, came those second, third, fifth thoughts, and I came to the conclusion that, well, maybe it wasn't entirely his fault, or at least I cannot rule out that I did the best job I could. So I thought that maybe I'll start by becoming a better reviewer to know better how people think about code review, and then I can find out if people are really toxic or it's just me that's making them that way. So I'm going to share this story of how I came to that conclusion and what are my conclusions, basically. And as every good story, this one starts a long time ago in ancient Greece. So we'll start with Plato. So he's a nice guy. He's been mentioned in this conference at least once this year. So he came up with something we know today as the Chariot Allegory. And basically, the Chariot Allegory was to describe how people think. The chariot, or the rider, was this logos, so the thinking, the logical mind, that needs to tame two beasts, the beast of Timus, which is the high spirit, our, this highly needs, and lowly desires of Eros. And for the chariot to ride straight, this rider has to have a firm grip upon those beasts, otherwise they will rule where the chariot goes. And, well, it was a good story, and it kind of sticks in our culture, because many, many years later, Daniel Kahneman came up with maybe not similar story, but something that he received a Nobel Prize for. So he described the way people think, and he divided our thinking into fast and slow thinking. And basically, fast thinking is what Plato thought about these beasts. So it's the emotional, the instinctive part. But not only, this is also stuff we know by heart. So what is 2 plus 2, what's your name? Or if you're as old as me, you probably remember your first landline phone. But it also helps us live our day-to-day lives. Because if you're driving a car, you don't overthink every traffic sign you see. You just look at it and you know. And this is how the evolution created this fast thinking. When the bush was moving, well, those who were curious enough to go there might have encountered something dangerous. And those who thought, oh, that might be something dangerous, I'll go away, won this round. And basically, this is very low energy, so it's very promoted by the evolution and by our brain, but also very general way of thinking. And although it really, really helps us with our day-to-day lives, well, it deals in absolutes. And we know that this stuff can create and destroy empires. So it's probably not the best way. But before I go to the slow thinking, let's have a short discussion, short example from the book of Daniel Kahneman. So an individual has been described by his neighbor as follows. So Steve is very shy and withdrawn, invariably helpful, but with very little interest in people or the world of reality. A meek and tidy soul, he has a need for order and structure and a passion for detail. So a quick show of hands. Who thinks that this describes a librarian, just an ideal librarian? Come on, okay, several people. And who thinks that I'm pulling your legs and, of course, it's a trap? Okay. So before answering that question, we'll come to the slow thinking, and you'll probably figure this one out by yourself. So the slow thinking is this second layer of thinking. It's logical, it's deliberative, but it's slow, and it's very energy non-efficient. So it needs our conscious thought that we really want to think straight, think more about the stuff that our fast thinking gave us the general idea. And although we probably would like our friends to get to the slow thinking when doing code review, maybe it's a bit hard, because at the same time, if we're not conscious enough, it might happen that instead of thinking through the general idea, this stereotype that appeared in our heads, we might find some additional information that, well, that really support that idea, instead of trying to chip it and find, is it really true, or maybe it has its flaws. So that's the problem with slow thinking, but still, these are the only tools we have. So we need to use them to the best, right? And, well, let's come back to Steve. And, yeah, of course, in America, where this study was conducted, there are 5 times more farmers than there are librarians. And there are even more male farmers than there are male librarians. So it's more probable that Steve is a farmer, because those characteristics don't really describe a librarian, they just describe a stereotype, which not often is true. The other thing that might impact the way our code review is received is that we want to feel in control, basically. And by in control, I don't mean that we all want to build our empires. Maybe some of us, yes, but not everyone. But we have this mental model of the world around us. And we want this mental model to be as exact as it can be. And every time we see something or hear or read that doesn't match that model, well, it really makes us a bit anxious. And if I say that you're all bad at code review, some of you may feel this nasty sting of, oh, no, I'm not really bad at code review. Maybe I need to know more, but I'm certainly not bad. Well, this is what we might call a cognitive dissonance. It happens when the world around us doesn't meet the mental model we have. And the guy whose name is in the topic of this presentation, Sigmund Freud, was working on this problem, and he came up with what is known as personality defense mechanisms. And they are the key to understanding how people react to our code reviews, because they are the kind of filter or rose glasses, if you like, that stand between the world and our mental model in our minds. So they help us digest this information that comes. And, well, you may think, okay, so the filter, if you would get this raw information, maybe it would be better? Not really. It happens that some people lack some or all of those personality defense mechanisms, and they can suffer depression and other mental illnesses. So we need to work with what we have. And just one more name, this is George Eamon Valiant, and what he did, he took those personality defense mechanisms and he grouped them into 4 levels, and we'll be using those 4 levels to understand how they can impact the way we do code review. So the first level, the pathological one. It means that this negative energy that is created when we have cognitive dissonance is really dispersed. People don't react to what happens around them. And the ideal example here is the denial. Just people will look at the world and say, no, my model in my mind is what the world looks like. The world must be wrong. And in code review, it translates to, okay, I'll do that fix that you're asking me to do, but, well, I still think that what I do is best. And it's not always the conscious thought, it's not the line of thought that people have. They will just fix it and forget it, because forgetting is also a part of denial. So they can make those mistakes again and again, which is not an ideal place we want to put people that we're doing review into. So maybe level 2. Not really. Immature means that people start to cope with this negative energy, but in the end, they cope with the use on your own, on your expense. And by you, I mean by the reviewer's expense. And this is what happened in my team. Basically, our manager probably built some kind of mental projection. So he thought that I think of him as a bad programmer, although that wasn't on my mind at the moment. And he started acting out. And by acting out, I mean he started making himself the victim and me as the oppressor. So when he was talking with others, he made me look bad. And he was being passive-aggressive, which meant he tried, well, it really landed on the whole team because he forced us to put all the review through him. So we couldn't merge any code because he wanted to have a look to ensure quality. Well, this happens, and, well, it wasn't against the rules, but he really made our lives hell. So immature can make life in your team toxic. Level 3, well, it's a bit better. I mean, it won't dissolve your team, but neurotic means that people will use that negative energy and they will cope with it, but on their own expense, which means that it can erode their mind, and basically it is one of the things that can put you in the burnout, which we don't want. We don't want to lose good programmers, especially nowadays. And they can go to the burnout because they will repress this negative energy, so they will maybe do nothing, but they will remember and they will just wait for it to disperse, or they will try to intellectualize, so they will think about those issues a lot instead of doing something. And, well, doing something means you're going to the 4th level, mature, and this is where we want our colleagues to be. Basically, in a mature way, you're just using this negative energy to do something productive. It can be translated into anticipation. So you know that there can be some issues in your code. That's normal, and we can talk this out. I can learn from that. Or you can take it with humor or roughhousing, as one of my teams did. But this is not something that we, as code reviewers, can help with. But we can help with sublimation. So we can write our review comments in such a manner that they will be easier to digest. But how to do it? How to do indeed, like Winnie the Pooh once said? Well, let's start with basics. We can start by avoiding the word you, because you is a kind of pointing finger of the mind. Nobody likes being pointed finger at, right? You feel the tension. You feel that everybody is looking at you because somebody pointed at you, and you start to rise your defenses up. And, well, this is why a lot of people can't take their compliments, because we'll tend to say, oh, you're so great. You look so beautiful. You are so smart. But for our old brain, it is you. And it raises the defenses. So instead of saying you, we can exchange it to a more neutral ways of saying, like, we. Instead of saying you made a mistake, you can write, we agreed to write the code in this manner. Or you can use whatever construction you like. But we has a very nice ring to it, because it says, okay, this is a shared responsibility. It's not your fault. It's just a fault that we're going to fix. We're in it together. So I like we, but you can choose whatever you like. The next thing would be, don't argue by appealing to authority. And by authority, I mean any authority, including yours, because, and by that, I also mean not showing that somebody who's great wrote a great code. No, I say, you must do it like this because, I know, Bruce Eckel wrote it like this, or because Björn Stroustrup wrote it like this, or because I write it like this. No, I mean, you will receive that those people will fix the code, but you will antagonize them quite directly. This was described by this young, nice fellow, Arthur Schopenhauer. You might know him. He was once a very popular person in memes. This is the only smiling photo I found of him on the internet. He was born in Gdańsk. Well, at the time it was Danzig, I guess. And he was not only this philosopher who was constantly sad. He also wrote a book called The Art of Being Right. Basically, he described a lot of dirty heuristic strategies that help you win the argument, but at the same time, openly antagonize the other person. And, well, appealing to authority is one of them. The other is argument from silence. So nobody has ever complained to writing a code like this. So do it like this, nobody complains. Or everybody writes the code like this. Come on, do it like this. Don't make it better or whatever. Don't change it. Just do it like everybody else. That's argumentum ad populum. So please don't do it. It might work, but on the other hand, it's creating this irritation in another person. Maybe not anger, but they will become a bit irritated, and this consecutive gathering of irritation becomes anger later on. And don't try to use NLP on your colleagues. And by NLP, I don't mean natural language processing. If you like to do natural language processing, please do. It's super fun. I've made my master's thesis on that, and it's great. I mean neuro-linguistic programming. Basically, those are techniques that make other people do what you want them to do. One of those techniques is anchoring. So anchoring means that if you say that something is simple or easy, then all the others will think, okay, maybe it's not simple, but it's not super hard. Even if it is super hard, you will have this bias from the start. So please don't do it, because people will see through that after a while. Maybe not at first, but then they will become aware of that, and they will try to avoid you. So it really makes it a toxic team. The other thing is be skeptic to Calgo code and magpie programming. So basically, they are not inherently bad. But if you're not familiar with Calgo code programming, it all started with the Calgo codes. So they were created when US and UK government, they needed to build landing strips on the Pacific islands. And well, some of them were inhabited. So they gave people gifts so they could build those landing strips. And after the war ended, well, they went back home, and those people wanted more gifts. So they thought, okay, we received gifts because there was a landing strip, so let's build a landing strip so we will get gifts. But that wasn't true. They received gifts because they wanted to create a landing strip. And in the programming world, well, it's basically something similar. We're doing something because it was beneficial at one point, and we're too afraid, or we just don't want to change it, because we hope that it will bring us benefits in the future. And it might be true. It might be still true, but we shouldn't show it that way to people we give code review to, because they would like to know why. And if you catch yourself that you are doing this Calgo code reviews, you should stop, search why we are doing this in our company like this, and come back with an answer. Because otherwise we're just proliferating this Calgo code programming, and we're not fixing anything. And magpie programming is, well, something a bit opposite. So I'm a magpie programmer, and I love those new shiny libraries, new shiny languages, or versions of languages. But you know what? In the end, when I just write to my colleagues that, well, there is a new library for that, check it out, I also make them a bit irritated, because instead of doing the research myself, they have to do it for me. And in the end, it might appear that, well, yes, it's quite good, but it's not production grade, or it's not fast enough. So yeah, just do your research. And if you do it before making a code review comment, I think it's good, and you're good to go. And the last one, the last don't criticize for the sake of criticism. And it has a spectrum of values here, because you can criticize because you have a bad day. So maybe if you have a bad day, you can drop doing code review on this particular day because you're too grumpy, and it really helps. I'm trying not to do code reviews on the end of my day, because I tend to be grumpy when I finish my work. But the other things here is that, well, we sometimes tend to write things that we don't like. And it's not part of the code review process normally, so we don't have it in our code style. We don't have it in any other document about how we should write our code. But we just don't like it. And, well, it's also a bit irritating. It creates this negative tension if we do it. I suggest we go a bit up with that. We talk to the whole team. We take this topic, maybe on the daily, maybe on the refinement, and you say, well, I see that we're doing this and that in our code, but I don't particularly like that. I have this and this and this reason why these things don't work as we think they work, or as we think they should work. So maybe we can change it. And if you come with this, some people will say, yeah, okay, that's a viable thing to do, let's do it. And the others might say no. And then you have to live with that you'll see that code again and again, but in the end, well, you'll be the person who is a bit irritated. But it's better because you know why, not because somebody made you that way. Now for the good stuff. So show and tell. Well, this is something that people are discouraged to do when they are on the writing classes. So basically, on the writing classes, they say show, don't tell. When they're making these TV shows, show, don't tell, because it's exposition, it's bad. But in code review, it's not so bad, because if you write an additional example to your code, what you would do in place of the reviewed guy, then it helps people understand. Not all of us speak perfect English, and I guess probably not even all Englishmen speak perfect English. So we don't always write what we have in mind, or at least the same thing that we have in mind. And giving this code example might really help understand. So I had it in my team. One of our junior colleagues received a review that stated, "This name is bad, fix it." And by no means, I think, the reviewer had a bad day or wanted to be unnice. But first, it sounded a bit unnice. But secondly, our junior was really frightened because, well, it felt like he should know what to change, and he had no idea. So instead of going to the reviewer, he went to me, asking, "Hey, Piotr, maybe you can help me with that. What should I fix with that name?" And, well, the name wasn't particularly bad. It wasn't great either, but it was according to our coding standards. So I didn't really know what the other guy had in mind. So I encouraged him to, well, you have to ask him because I can't help you. But, well, the key here is that he was frightened. He didn't want to ask that question to the right person because he felt that he should know that. And if he shows up openly that, well, I don't know that, the other person will think less of him. Maybe he shouldn't, but we should also help them, people who read our reviews, not to feel guilty because they made a mistake. So if you give them a little snippet of code, by no means I don't encourage you to spoon-feed people with the right answers, but just give them an idea what is in your mind. It will really help those shy people who are a bit withdrawn and maybe without good reasons they feel a bit inferior. So please consider that one. And another thing is starting a conversation. So basically we think of review a lot like a book review, a movie review, and those things happen mostly in the end of the life cycle. And by end of life cycle, I mean the book has been printed or is in print at the moment, or the movie is going to be screened. There was just a press screening of the movie. And those people, what they can say to you? They can say, well, it's a bad movie. Don't go to it. Don't waste your money. Don't buy that book. This is the only thing they can help you with. But what we're doing is a couple of steps back. It is the moment when people are doing the proofreading of the book, when there are the first screenings before there is the final effects added and all the other stuff. What we're trying to achieve here is a kind of conversation. And not only conversation in a way that you're asking questions, but this is also viable. But encourage people to say more about their code. It gives you several additional benefits. First of all, they see that you're interested in the code. And it lowers this level of stress because they feel that, okay, you're interested in the code. It's not like you're coming there all in white and nagging. No, you're just coming here to talk about it because it's a shared responsibility. And the other thing, by asking those questions, by trying to dig a bit deeper, you can know a bit more about this code, and then it might so happen that it's not really a flaw in the code, Now you know why they wrote this code like this. So it has a lot of benefits. And, well, I guess the last thing here is say something nice for a change. Because you don't have to say every time something nice, but you see that the code is getting better, or you like this particular library you never heard of previously. It's nice to ask about this library another person, or say, well, this code snippet is really nice, we could reuse it, I really like that one. And it really helps with the bonding, especially when you're working remotely and you don't have this daily stand-ups when you see a lot of people, you don't go together to have some coffee. So this little drops of joy, these little drops of being civilized, of being nice to one another, really help. So how would Sigmund Freud perform a code review? I need to answer that because that was the question and the topic of the presentation. Well, I don't really know. He was a psychiatrist, so he would probably not look at the code at all. But I guess that he would look at it as a psychiatrist, so he wouldn't try to antagonize the person who's sitting next to him. So maybe he would use you when it's appropriate, but he would try to give it a very neutral tone. He wouldn't use NLP or heuristic strategies, because why would he? He's not trying to force anything on his patient. And he wouldn't do fault finding, because if we're doing fault finding, I guess that the Freudian thing would be to look for the faults of their parents rather than the person that they are talking with. And, well, he would surely show that this code is a shared responsibility because it helps people to open. And he would start a conversation. Isn't that how all the therapists, at least in the television, do, right? And he would say something nice, because nice things also help with opening others. But if you need to, narrow it down to even more, I would say that you should be honest with your opinions, honest about how you feel with the code, both if you feel it's bad and if you feel it's good. Be open with your opinions, and especially be mindful that, well, on the other side of the code, there is another person who might have a bad day and has some level of stress, has good and bad days, and, well, they're just the same as you are. And think how you would like to receive a code review. And just, this being civil in a team is a spoonful of sugar. And we all know, if we watched Mary Poppins, and I guess not everyone did, that the spoonful of sugar helps the medicine go down, right? And if you want to know more about human psychology, I can really point you to Sigmund Freud's book, but it's quite hard to read. Maybe it's better to check Phoebe Kramer's Protecting the Self, the mechanisms, the defense mechanism in action. It's nice, it's very digestible. I don't really recommend reading the paper by George Eman Valiant. It was the basis for this presentation, but, well, it's a very science literature, so if you're really into it. And of course, I really encourage you to check Daniel Kahneman's Thinking Fast and Slow. It's a great book. It's a Nobel Prize winner's book, and this is exactly what he received Nobel Prize for. And if you like that kind of stuff, Arthur Schopenhauer, The Art of Being Right, a lot of things you can learn that you shouldn't do, ever, unless you want to have an open fight with another person, of course. And if you want to get slides from this presentation, you can check out my Twitter. I will send them after this presentation right away. And I guess I was speeding a bit, so we have more minutes to have some conversation if you like. So if any questions or comments, I'm open. Really? None. Thank you.